Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Wire app. I'm Jahnavi, and with me today I have MK Venu, who's founding editor of The Wire, and Sangeeta Barooah Pisharoty, who's National Affairs editor at The Wire. Thank you both so much for joining me. The new tariff regime announced by US President Donald Trump took effect on Wednesday and would have sharply increased the price of exports to the United States had he not paused the same scheme within 24 hours of it taking effect. Now, only China is going to face a higher rate, even higher than the 104% announced earlier at 125% now, while all other countries are facing a blanket 10% tariff. Now, while the Trump administration has repeatedly referred to these tariffs as reciprocal, the formula they use to calculate them actually has nothing to do with how much other countries charge on the US exports. It is calculated based on the trade deficit, which many experts have questioned and criticized. Now, Trump had announced the new tariffs last week, and ever since then, the stock and bond markets have basically been in free fall. They're now bouncing back with the announcement of this pause, and even within the US, consumers would have likely seen the prices of several basic goods, like seafood and coffee, going up substantially had these tariffs really taken effect. But meanwhile, even though he has backtracked, Trump is maintaining his rhetoric of the strong man being the strong man and said that leaders from around the world are trying to kiss his ass, and he's paused it because all these leaders were getting yippy and afraid. Now, what yippy means in this context, we don't know. Within the Trump administration too, there has been disagreement over this issue, and there seem to be certain cracks that are appearing. Two of his top advisors, Elon Musk and his trade advisor Peter Navarro, have been openly calling each other names about this. Navarro called Musk a car assembler rather than a car manufacturer, and Musk responded by calling Navarro a moron. What Navarro was trying to say was that because Tesla imports parts of cars from various parts of the world, the tariffs would likely have an impact, and that is why Musk was arguing for free trade. Venu, perhaps we can start looking at this quick change in policy. What explains this pause within 24 hours, and what is the impact it's going to have?
See, this pause in some ways was expected because the way the global markets went for a toss, both stock markets and bond markets. The American administration had already got basically a wake-up call on what lies ahead, right? And most American businessmen who supported Trump and who funded the Republican Party, they were also desperately calling whoever they could in the administration, even congressmen whose election they had funded, that this has to stop. And this included Elon Musk, this included Ackman, this included the CEO of BlackRock, one of the largest investors around the world, and they all voices were telling Trump that this is a madcap way of implementing tariffs across the board to all countries, friends and foes. But what was the tipping point? Why did Trump yesterday decide to pause implementation of this tariff for 90 days against 75 countries? The real story is that there was the bond markets, they went into a freeze. Now I'll explain what bond markets mean. The Japanese, who hold over $1 trillion of American government securities, which means the Japanese have lent to America, they are holding government bonds. They started selling bonds in the market. Japanese and the Chinese, it appears, are coordinating their strategy because a few days ago, the Chinese foreign minister, Japanese foreign minister, and the South Korean foreign minister, they met in Tokyo, and they discussed ways of protecting their supply chain. Now, this is all about protecting the existing trade arrangements and protecting it from this madcap decision by Trump to, in a precipitate way, to overnight just all trade would have ceased overnight if these tariffs had gone through. Now, the bond markets yesterday froze, and the US corporation. When I say bond markets froze, what I'm saying is that people started selling the American bonds. People who had lent to America, Japan and others, foreigners who were holding American bonds. By the way, foreigners hold about $10 trillion of American bonds, right?
So that basically means is that they have less faith in America repaying those loans.
No, yeah, in the sense they were saying that the signal that Japan was sending was that you have borrowed from me so much to sort of run your economy for your consumption, and as a borrower, you can't impose such harsh terms on me. Normally, lenders impose harsh terms on the borrowers. Here, it was the opposite that was happening. Now, the US debt market basically is $55 trillion. The US bond market, the value is about $55 trillion. And it is this bond market, if I were to use a simple analogy, it acts as the engine for all global trade, basically it acts as an engine for the global economy to run the way, smoothly the way it has been running so far, last, 30, 40 years. Now, the moment Japanese start selling bonds, and others also start selling bonds, Chinese may also have sold bonds, what happened was the bond prices crashed. Unprecedented crash in bond prices. As a result, the interest rates on 10-year bonds went up unprecedented. Last 2 days, I think it went up by 56 or 60 basis points, which was like it was completely unprecedented. More than that, people who are trying to raise money for further investments inside US, corporates could not actually go out and sell their bonds because the government bonds acts as a kind of queue for other corporate bonds in terms of setting of interest rate, right? The government is generally in economics, in finance, government is the cheapest borrower because government is sovereign. After that, based on that, corporates borrow. So the debt market froze, corporates could not borrow, and there was a crisis because the debt market, as I said, $55 trillion at the moment valued at, debt market acts as a lubricant for the global economy. And that lubricant was kind of drying up. So when that lubricant dries up, the engine stalls. Very simple analogy. So, and US bonds are the most purchased bonds around the world, simply because, as you said, US had underwritten the whole global financial system over decades. Say post Bretton Woods, just as they underwrote the trading system via GATT, WTO, etc. The financial system is also kind of is broadly underwritten by the US, and the US the bond market, the US bonds which are held by the rest of the world, as I said, $20 trillion, those bondholders became extremely nervous, and they started their selling of the bonds in the market was their way of expressing no confidence in Trump's policies, very simply put. And the lubricant dried up, the engine seized. At this point, Trump was advised by some of his people. I'm told Scott Bessent, who himself has been an investment banker in the past, right? He knows how the bond market. I think he whispered into Trump's ears that now this is the final demise of the engine, the debt market which runs the economy. So he had to immediately he blinked. He had to take a U-turn and announce a pause for 90 days. And but with China, he continues his main target being China, because China is the biggest, second largest economy, which is challenging the US, as it were, today. So he's kept China outside of this, and let's see what happens over the next 90 days. But many economists have calculated, US economists say that it's just a pause. We don't know what Trump will do over the next 90 days. He'll obviously negotiate with all these countries, including India. But the actual tariff levels, average tariff levels, which were 35% before Trump, did this backtrack. Even after this backtrack, which is for about 75 countries, the average tariff levels remain at 25%. So earlier it would have been 35%, now it is 25%. So economists reckon that even 25% is very high. It will continue to disrupt the global economy. It will disrupt world trade. It will disrupt investments. The uncertainty continues. People will have to pay more in America to buy simple goods. I'm told a car, anybody who goes to buy a car there today may have to pay $4,000, $5,000 more for a mid-size car, for a more expensive car up to $10,000. All other things would be expensive. It will be inflationary in the short run. And the chances of recession, which many said was more than 50% earlier, maybe now it will probably reduce to about 45% or 40%. But the chances of recession still looms, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next 90 days. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like it's interesting you mentioned that China is now a sort of focused target of this regime, because earlier it did seem a little like he was initiating a trade war with the whole world, and then obviously that cannot work for a country that does import so much. And now with China, China had already said that they're going to reciprocate by increasing tariffs on US products to 84%.
They've already done it.
They had already done that when it was 104%. Now that it's 125%, we don't know how they're going to respond. But after a while, it doesn't matter, right? Like when if it's between 125%, it doesn't matter. It's already so
China
expensive.
China is not going to...
And by that time, things are already so expensive. Consumers are not going to be able to bear the brunt of that. So that trade is basically going to come to some sort of halt or diminish greatly. But China is the only country that has challenged this. The EU said that they might, but then they didn't really do anything and have approached Trump for talks. India seems to be thinking that it has won in some way, because the regime that Trump had announced had a 26% increased tariff for India, which is now paused.
Paused for 90 days.
Paused for 90 days. But External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, while talking about that, basically seemed to think that that was some sort of a win. He even bragged, saying, India is the only country that has reached some sort of intermediary talks on a bilateral agreement with the US in this Trump presidency. The attitude seems to be that, this policy, it will affect India, but it will affect other countries more. So we're okay. But the claims that, Jaishankar and other ministers are making on Trump having this special feeling for India doesn't seem to play out in reality. It is something that opposition parties have also pointed out, particularly because last week we saw how Indian stock markets also fell along with the rest of the world. There was no insulation from that. And this kind of bilateral agreement that Jaishankar is talking about, was something that they had broached during Trump's first presidency too, and it never came into being. If China, say, stops exporting to the US, or exports fall dramatically, it is going to be looking for newer markets for its products, and India is likely to be one of them. Sangeeta, what do you think we can see in the future of that?
No, that I fully agree. I think my fear is that India will end up being a market for Chinese goods even more, because what will come is cheaper. Okay, our economy is in shambles. People have not been able to get good employment. Inflation is high. So if you go to a market, if you find something which is cheaper, you end up buying that. Think of our Diwali lights, which are coming from China. Okay, so because we have not invested as much in the MSMEs. We have not strengthened them. Post-COVID, though, what has happened. So forever people are looking for cheaper goods. Okay, and Chinese goods are in a way, they look good. They're cheaper. They have some sort of a twist in it. So you have some sort of a novelty in it. So people get attracted to that. I will go back to the Diwali lights. So why do you like those lights? Because they have some sort of a different mechanism to, lighten up your place, and it's cheap. And it's like, it may be use and throw, but people don't go there. They just want that thing at that moment. So there is all those attractions are there. So if the Chinese goods don't go to the US, they're obviously going to come to India and to the rest of the poorer Asian nations. So we are going to end up as the market for the Chinese. So essentially, I agree when you say that this is a trade war between China, two big giants, China and India, China and the US. So India, whatever Mr. Jaishankar says, we will finally end up as a market. We have a bigger chance. I tell you, I mean, like, I'll just story. I'm a little diverting, but I need to also bring in this factor. Now that look what is happening with Bangladesh. Now we are saying that we are not, going to this transshipping thing is now coming into becoming an issue between the two nations. But who uses those ports? We need those ports a lot more, particularly for the northeastern region. Chittagong port is important. We've invested in a lot of their ports. Now we are saying that we will not be able to use those ports. So who will use it? China. If you look at the Myanmar, Sittwe port and all, we've invested in it. We will not be able to use it. Who will be able to take advantage of the ports that are made from the Indian taxpayers' money? So it's the Chinese. So finally, even Mr. Jaishankar, it is very nice to do this kind of grandstanding and say that we are getting some special treatment on that. Yes, the Prime Minister did get special treatment when he was there talking to Trump. Our people were sent with shackles by plain loads. So this is like is it not a special treatment then? I mean, like, it is very, what I see in this whole ministry and this government is that they want to just present things beautifully with like a sweet pill, but it's actually not. So what you say is correct, that China is now going to grab newer markets and even more. They're going to penetrate even more into these Asian markets, and which includes India.
This actually, what Sangeeta is saying, it already happened in 2018 when he introduced the first, when he thought he was punishing China, Trump, during his first term. After that, China just pivoted to the other world markets. Yes. Today, China is the largest trading partner for 130 countries. The train has already left the station long ago. China is today already controls, control is the wrong term, is already embedded in the global trading and investment system independent of the US. Yes. In fact, what Trump is now doing is akin to which many US economists are also saying. He's further isolating himself. He wants to, now why has he taken this step? I'm coming back to this shocking backtrack that he did yesterday. Because a lot of his advisors told him, by trying to punish the rest of the world, you are bringing China and other countries together. Yeah. Whereas your original objective was to punish China. So he's now doing a bit of that. But mind you, you just said that the only country which has retaliated is China. No. Japan has retaliated in action, indeed. So yesterday, Trump said that 35 countries, their leaders are, they're willing to kiss my ass or whatever, Actually, China and Japan are kicking his ass now, And I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if many other countries, Russia would have sold bonds, And Mr. Jaishankar is living in a fool's paradise if he thinks, a statement he made, I wrote about it in London at a Chatham House interview, where he preemptively declared that this whole, the new kind of currency, multi-currency arrangements which BRICS is proposing may not work. India is willing to go with the US-led financial architecture. I thought it was a blunder that he committed, because if you hear the Russian foreign minister, Lavrov, few days ago, he told, I heard him on Russia Today television, where he says that US itself, by its action, has pushed all the BRIC countries to come to their own arrangements to do settlement. And China has recently introduced a digital settlement system away from SWIFT, from which the US had thrown Russia out as part of the sanctions. And within BRICS, local currency trading is happening within BRICS and outside. After Trump put sanctions on Russia and froze their Russian dollar assets, most central banks have doubled their purchase of gold. All this is part of the de-dollarization process which Trump himself has triggered, right? And Biden also didn't do anything to correct that. Biden also went along with the China tariff. So I don't see any coherent strategy coming from Trump, from the US as of now, because he has just paused for 90 days. Some of the next few steps that he is looking at could be very dangerous for India also. Jeffrey Sachs told CNBC yesterday, I was watching his interview, he says India should not, as a strategy, India should not be complacent that the ongoing negotiations with the US will produce all the best results for India. They may not. Because I'll tell you one area, Trump has said that he wants to shift all the generic drug industry to US. The biggest success story for India is its generic drugs industry, which over the last 20-25 years, which has flowered because of our patents regime. They are even talking about coercing India to dilute its patent regime, so that all the generics could move to the US, and start producing in the US. Now these are all very dangerous portents for India. So India should not think that US. It should negotiate with the US, but it should not put all their eggs in the US basket. And Jeffrey Sachs says that India should constantly now talk to European Union, talk to Japan, talk to South Korea, talk to China. So he says India should hedge its bets. And with China also, this is a moment where India can actually do a deal where it can ensure that Chinese don't dump all their goods into India, and do some balancing on the trade deficit that India suffers vis-a-vis China. All these are possible. So, but these require proper a strategy where you still have some faith in a kind of multipolar the multilateral system itself, because the Americans are pronouncing that multilateralism is dead. India should not yet endorse that view that multilateralism is dead. Although there are a lot of Indian foreign policy guys who are saying multilateralism is dead. It's not dead, because it'll emerge in a different form.
Sorry, just to add, to what Venu said, like the Japanese, the Canadians were like the immediate neighbors of Americans, are talking to the Japanese directly. So that's one thing. And the other thing I quickly want to say that what the language that Trump is used is almost, I think it's a very common language that you get to see used by the right-wing governments, be it Trump or Modi. It is grandstanding. I mean, like we saw that same thing after demonetization. Okay, demonetization really created a huge issue for the Indian economy. I would not say that we have fully recovered from it, and then came COVID. So, but that was the grandstanding, okay, that we are really bringing in a big change. So I see this whole Trump tariff thing is almost like a Indian version of the demonetization. And then you're stepping back, you're halting, but you know that you have overstepped, okay, but your whole grandstanding, the language that he is using was a similar thing that it's a vocabulary also, Jahnavi, we need to look at, through this. It's a financial story, of course, but it's also a political story. It's also a political writing story.
Yeah. Jahnavi, I just want to add, what Trump has done in the last, after he's taken over January, 7th, he has lost a lot of trust and confidence of all his trading partners who are friends. By constantly, as Sangeeta said, language, he constantly says that friends are worse than foes. Friends have treated America worse than foes. You can't keep saying this, especially when you borrowed money from the rest of the world for your consumption, and then you're telling them. And mind you, this is just trade. They have another plan called Mar-a-Lago project, which they want to, which is part of his larger Trump's project to reshape global finance. Under the Mar-a-Lago, I mean, it's shocking to me. Under the Mar-a-Lago Accord, the proposal is that America has now hugely indebted. Its debt to GDP is now 130%. It's unable to pay its debt. It has a $9 trillion interest payment coming up this year. Now, how do you deal with this debt? The Mar-a-Lago Accord proposes that if the rest of the countries around the world have, if you've borrowed some whatever $10 trillion from the rest of the world, you just call them up and say that I'm converting your 5-year loan or 10-year loan to a 100-year loan. Now, again, just think about it. Here again is the borrower which is coercing the lender, saying that I'll convert the bonds that you bought from 10-year to 100-year. Give me a break. I mean, it's always the lender who decides, right? When you borrow from a bank, the bank decides whether you should get a extension of your, loan period.
Correct.
It is not the borrower doesn't decide, These are basic economics. And he thinks, basically bullying. And they think that with their military power and with their coercive power, they can force this on the rest of the world. It is not happening. I'll tell you why, Jahnavi, because they are still under the impression that because they could force Plaza Accord on Japan and Germany in the 80s, they can do it again. 2025 is not 1980. China is not Japan. So there will be resistance. And I think all the sensible guys in the US, in academia and economists and geopolitical scientists, they understand this. Trump does not. Even Elon Musk understands it. That's why he called Navarro a moron, because this whole tariff business is a Navarro thing. Brainchild. It emerged from his book Death by China. During Trump's last tenure, his book Death by China was brought to Trump by one of his son-in-law, and Trump got completely sort of sold on that Navarro book. Which of course is a different story. Yeah.
No, but speaking politically, just before we close this topic, both of you mentioned that this is Trump just going out and doing something similar to how demonetization happened. And late one evening, we know that the consultation was close to none, and most people who were consulted, their opinions were not taken on board. Similarly, with tariffs in the US, it used to be a US Congress decision. Then the Congress decided to give the US President emergency powers to impose tariffs.
Apparently, Congress is not given. Jeffrey Sachs says that he has arrogated to himself the power. There is a challenge there in the coming up. Yeah.
So, I think across right-wing governments, we also see this attempt to really tone down the institutional power and centralize power in
one individual.
Not even necessarily in a group, but really in one individual, such that one day he gets up and feels like, okay, I'm going to do some weird calculations and impose really high tariffs on some very small countries, which it really will mean nothing to the US and will be ruinous for them. Yeah. And then next morning I'll wake up and say, no, actually, maybe it's not working out. I'll take it back. Yeah. So this really chaotic global order that we're seeing, in which and for one of the reasons for it is this deep centralization of power. So I was wondering if both of you would like to comment on that.
I mean, this is something which I personally feel that even the Americans are still reeling from this. They've not fully digested this, right? Like we also took a long time to digest demonetization. Probably even today we've not digested it because all the outcomes that they claimed not happening. Wads of notes have been found in the house of a judge, wherever notes. It's not that BJP is fighting elections via Paytm or something, right? So there is there's a huge risk in as you said, in institutions being undermined. And in this case, Jeffrey Sachs claims that Trump has arrogated to himself the power to implement this. The Congress has not, in substantive terms, has not really discussed these tariffs. It's not clear. But I'll draw a slight distinction between demonetization and this. Demonetization, not even the cabinet ministers knew about it, right? Jaitley didn't, finance minister didn't know about it. At least here, this was discussed among his advisors. Although many of the advisors were shocked because they didn't anticipate the way in which this would be implemented. Like Elon Musk didn't anticipate the tariffs would be so high that he won't be able to import parts for Tesla from Japan and China from tomorrow. Yeah. So his business is gone, dead. He's lost 50% of his market value. That's why he was reeling from it. He was protesting. He was calling Navarro moron. Navarro, and his retort was that, Musk is just an assembler of cars, which of course is not true. So there is within among the Republicans, in the Trump's kitchen cabinet, there is a big difference of opinion, which has led to the reversal. But I don't see that happening in India. I don't think our demon, there was within BJP, there was any, everybody kept quiet. It's far more centralized here than there, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Because see, now as a PMO is the place which runs everything. Okay, whether these ministries and so-called whatever that the system, that paraphernalia that we have is actually basically now everything is reporting to the PMO. I have heard that ministers, their offices get calls every evening, like what has your minister done today? So those kind of things have been happening, and this is Modi era. And just to add to what Venu said, even this whole Trump's idea of this tariff thing comes from one man's grand book idea. Demonetization also came from one right-wing man's grand idea that it needs to be implemented, okay, without even checking whether it actually will work. It's this whole thing is like to look at it. Others have know nothing. 70 years mein kuch nahi hua. Nothing has happened. It is only they know everything. So they will be the one which is going to bring the new world order or the new order in India or in the US. And so it is basically, I look at Jahnavi, this entire scape, be it demonetization, be it tariff by Trump, it's everything as a kind of a whole attitude of the right wing towards governance, towards nothing has happened. We are the ones who are going to bring this and then put the entire world into a sort of a chaos, and common men suffer. Like one example I would like to give you, like immediately what we saw in his April 8th order that if you see from the Supreme Court, on the governor, the Tamil Nadu governor R.N. Ravi. Okay, and who was look at what the Supreme Court has said, that he actually didn't act bona fide. That means as a constitutional position holder, he didn't follow the constitution. Okay. So he had no moral right to be there. But who picked him up for these big jobs? It was the PMO, whether one likes it or not. He's one of the Prime Minister's men. And that's the reason he was sent to Nagaland to bring out this grand Naga Accord. Because 70 years mein kuch nahi hua. 70 years nothing has happened. Because this issue was a grand issue. It was an issue. It's an ideal issue to establish Modi as the strong man, whom even Vajpayee couldn't bring a solution. He can. Okay. So 70 years nothing has happened. So this man comes in. So that was the project Mr. Rabi is sent to deliver. He fails to deliver, but he then pushes his whole career as a governor, okay, which is an institutional one position, big. So then he has been now moved to Tamil Nadu to carry out another project, okay. And then he ended up, I would say he was a failure in both, because he ended up not only not delivering what the Modi strongman image, pushing that, but also that after 2024 elections, Modi had to particularly show that he believes in the constitution, because that has affected his whole election campaign and the number of seats that they have lost. Okay, so the thing is that he even failed to deliver that. So we'll get to see, we've been seeing this fall of institutions and governors' institutions, particularly in different states. Okay, so as you said, it's like the one man gets up in the morning and then decides that today I will play with my peacocks. Tomorrow I am going to talk about chai. Tomorrow I am going to do this. But then you don't go back to it. You don't go back to it. You don't see actually what has happened there. Okay. So this is some sort of, as I said, I would like to repeat again that this is the entire thing that we are seeing is actually to be seen through the prism of the right-wing one strong man, what he thinks in the morning, what he's going to do, and the rest of the dunya, as they say in Hindi, bahar mein jaye.
You mentioned how the PMO, definitely has its hands everywhere if you look around India today. But one place where it's been very careful to try and wash his hands is Manipur.
Yes.
And so last week we saw the first sort of brokered peace meeting between the Meitei and Kuki-Zo communities, which was organized by the Ministry of Home Affairs in Delhi on the 5th of April. and it ended without any sort of agreement. The MHA had created sort of a draft that it wanted both sides to sign, and the Meitei organizations who were present agreed, and the Kuki-Zo communities did not. Now, one of their main points was that Kokomi, which is one of a very influential Meitei organization, had in fact refused to attend these talks at all. So then they can't say that they're going to stick to this agreement, which may or may not be signed. Now, Kokomi refused to attend because they're saying that this whole meeting was basically an attempt to stage what and give evidence for what Amit Shah said in Parliament last week, which was that, things are fine. We saw how in Parliament, in both the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, when there was discussion on President's rule in Manipur, it came up past 2 a.m. For everyone's tired, no one's watching, and it sort of pushed through at that moment. And in these middle of night events, one of the things Amit Shah said was that there's been no violence in Manipur since November. Now, we know this to be false. There have been 21 deaths in direct clashes. We're not even looking at then the deaths in camps and things like that. These are direct clash deaths since that date. And just yesterday in Churachandpur district, some parts have seen a new curfew because of some rising tensions. So clearly, this narrative that they're trying to push does not reflect the situation on the ground. Sangeeta, this is a matter you've been following since May 2023 when it began. And what we're seeing now is the way Amit Shah is saying that it's normal. So it seems like the national narrative also seems to have moved on from it in its normal way. What are you seeing?
See, that's what, be it Jaishankar talking about we are having a special relationship with the Americans, or Amit Shah saying everything is normal. It's like the narrative, okay? It's creating the narrative, and that narrative not necessarily need to be the fact on the ground. So as you yourself said that what we are seeing, he said it in Parliament. Can you imagine? I mean, and he said this in Parliament. Earlier also he said that the Chief Minister Biren Singh is cooperating. When we see that in the Manipur tapes that apparently he was not. So those things are there, okay? So when you talk about the peace deal, it's not going to be easy because this time, there are too many divisions even within the Meiteis. You mentioned the Kokomi, and they will not come because they want these are also very they want this or nothing. Okay, cookies also they want state or nothing. Okay, so these whole divisions have been created. So the situation is not right to bring everybody to the table and say now let's talk peace. What are the terms of peace? That will have to come, and before the peace happens, okay, you have to create a kind of a situation, an atmosphere for peace. Yeah. Mr. Ajay Bhalla has actually been sent. He's a trusted man, another PM's man was a home secretary, knew everything what was happening in the MHA, and then sent there. And when he went, people were wondering actually will there be a president's rule, and that happens. Okay, so now he is in control of the situation. But he's doing a lot of, in the sense that going out to meeting people, trying to establish that atmosphere for peace. You have to give him some credit. But the thing is that it is not reached that stage because you have kept that chief minister for too long. Okay, and when the home minister says he is with us on the same page as us. So even forget the cookies, the Meiteis who are displaced, they have no home to go back to. They actually are thinking, what is happening? Is anybody thinking about us in New Delhi? So in such a situation, peace is very difficult. Okay, I see peace in coming times, but not so soon. And peace will not be able to be brought by the Mr. Bhallas or Mr. Amit Shahs in Delhi. Okay, it will have to happen at the community level. You have to bring in the community heads together and say, now shut up, this is what I have decided. Because in the Northeast, the community thing is very important. Okay, government comes later. Okay, you have to get the approval of this. So I feel these are tribal societies also. Okay, there's a system in place. So I look at that. But coming to, I mentioned in Manipur tapes, the thing is that on March 24th was supposed to be the next hearing. This is a very crucial case.
You want to just give our viewers maybe a small summary of the tapes themselves?
Yeah, okay. See, the tapes we were, The Wire had published those tapes. Only the main reason for doing that is that a copy of it was given to the commission a judicial commission on Manipur set up by MHA. So we are, as journalists, supposed to, we put it out on in public domain, because the set of people who had submitted to the tapes to the commission were actually given that veil of secrecy. So we are supposed to maintain that and yet put this in public domain. And why we are doing it as journalists is only because this is of significant importance, because so many lives have gone, so many people's lives, thousands of people's have been displaced. So this is our job as a fourth estate of democracy to bring this out, and we did that. So then, of course, somebody took it to the Supreme Court, and rightly so. The petition was filed just to, because after the stories came out, the Chief Minister N. Biren Singh said that it is not his voice, okay? It has been tampered with.
But the commission is looking at that.
Commission is looking at it, has not said anything, has not denied anything. And then, of course, that the petition happened.
But it's taken that as prima facie
as
evidence.
prima facie evidence.
Yeah, that's very important, because they have taken that as
Their prima facie evidence. And then the thing is, now their private lab has already said that over 90% match has happened with the Chief Minister's voice. And now the intervention at that time from the central government was that we would like to get it done by a government-owned land. So CFSL was brought in, and that was supposed to submit its analysis on March 24th. And remember, this is a bench headed by the Chief Justice, okay? And then that case has since not been listed. Can you imagine? It's a very important case, and we are not seeing it being listed. Okay, so I know the courts are very busy, but this is also a very important case. Okay, and same thing you will see another case I want to mention about Manipur. You know, the whole encounter death cases. So many, over 1,000 people have died like that. That case has also not been listed for so many years. So these are the things. Then what message do we?
And this encounter over how many years? 1,000 people died.
Over 1,000 people. This was the they happened during the Congress era, right. And both Manipur police and the army and all that.
So it's over a period.
Over a period of time, okay, and for a long period of time. Their insurgency in Manipur was very old. So, and then that, because they wanted to put some sort of accountability on the security forces also. So, but that case has not been heard. You know, it was Justice Lokur who brought that in. He's a retired man for several years. After that, we have not heard this case. So now my worry is that this is such a significant case, okay, will that also face something similar? Because politically what needed to be done was done. He had been removed from this thing. So now he's also a very worried man. If this somehow legally something happens, will his party protect him or not? You know, it's a very, as a journalist, for me, it's a very interesting times also, because when you push the man against the wall, he may speak a lot more than he's expected to.
And I think just before we close, one of the things it does seem like has happened, in that very brief discussion we mentioned in Parliament on Manipur in the middle of the night, one of the things opposition leaders were trying to raise was that, it's been now almost 2 years since the violence began, where in April now, it started in May of 2023, and the Prime Minister has not found the time to visit the state. Yeah. And now it seems like even with the Supreme Court not listing the case, there seems to be some sort of overall agreement in the central establishment that we don't need to talk about it anymore. Yeah. Do you think that's succeeding?
No. See, it's standard operating procedure of this government. They did it in Kashmir. They think that by just not talking about something, by looking away from the truth, they say that sometimes the truth is so it is so kind of forbidding that you just don't look at it. So, and somehow this government thinks that they can rely on people's short memory and then later bring together some political settlement. Not happening, as Sangeeta said. In Manipur, though, definitely not happening, because peace, as she said, has to be preceded by some truth and reconciliation process for the communities. This is for the benefit of the community. Unless that happens, I don't think Delhi can. They can't do it. They've not been doing it in Kashmir. I mean, they may claim superficially that Kashmir has returned to normal, but if you ask Omar Abdullah, President Chief Minister, he says a lot of things have to be, still repaired. the psyche has to be repaired.
Yeah, another thing is also, I just want to quickly plug in the Wire's effort also. Like, see, as all of you said, that the national, the so-called legacy media's eyes are moved to another bigger things or other more important things, or they're more prioritizing something else. But I see the Manipur story actually going only in the digital media. Okay, so which is like they have been following the stories and what is generally happening there, and like they did before. Okay, and Wire has also got a Pulitzer grant to follow up the things from the ground. So we are publishing stories, and from today onwards, I think we'll be publishing those stories. So I request the audience also, the readers also, to look at those stories, read those stories, comment, and also support independent media.
Yeah.
Also, one last thing I want to add before we wind up. This notion that that everything can be peppered over, it doesn't work. It happens in it happens in politics. It is happening in economics. Now suddenly there's an attempt to divert. The economy was already in a funk much before the Trump tariffs. We all know it, right? Now they think that everything can be blamed on Trump tariffs. Our economy is going down. The RBI governor yesterday has reduced the forecast for GDP growth. Other private analysts are saying 5%. They used to talk about close to 7% GDP growth for this year. Now they are saying it could be 5.5 to 6%. Many private. No foreign investment coming. Foreign investment has reached its lowest. Net FDI is at some $10 billion. I think the RBI governor gave some figure which is 0.3% of GDP or something. I mean, it's but this government will keep saying that, oh, we are the fastest growing. Even after the Trump tariffs wreak the havoc, India will still probably be the fastest growing. And this whole notion that that India is not affected is like saying that in a forest fire, many have got 80% burns. We have only got about 40% burns. I mean, this is what sort of logic is this? One doesn't know.
Okay, we will draw this conversation to a close, but we will be covering more on all of the issues we spoke about on our website and on our YouTube channel. So thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you all for watching.